orders of the day. The Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Speaker. Order G27.
Order G27, second reading of Bill 27, an act to enact the Geologic Carbon Storage Act 2025 and to amend various acts with respect to wildfires, resource safety, and surveyors. Mr. Harris.
Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move second reading of Bill 27, an act to enact the Geological Carbon Storage Act 2025 and to amend various acts with respect to wildfires, resource safety, and surveyors.
The Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Sorry, I'm in a bit of a funny corner here, so we gotta get adjusted. Good afternoon, colleagues. I hope everyone is ready for a riveting one-hour lead-off in debate on this bill. I'd just like to let you know, Madam Speaker, I will be sharing my time with the esteemed, I don't know who wrote this, but esteemed Minister of Forestry and Forestry Products. Thank you. Yes, he is very esteemed, and he's ready to go too. I know. All right. I'd also like to give a shout out. I believe my wife might be watching. So hi, Kim. It's good to see you. Minister Cho says hello as well. I know everyone here is. Everyone says hello. Everyone says hello. You can tell I'm trying to waste an hour. Isn't this good? It's good. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Let's get to the meat of it. Madam Speaker, let me be clear. This bill is about doing the right thing for Ontario families, for our communities, and for the workers and industries that keep our province moving. If passed, this legislation will let us store captured carbon dioxide safely underground, cutting emissions while protecting industrial jobs. Strengthen how we prevent and fight wildland fires, because Ontario families deserve to be safe in their homes and businesses, and it also will give us the tools to address aging oil and gas wells, fixing safety risks quickly without unnecessary red tape. Will also allow us to modernize the land surveying profession, making sure we've got the skilled people we need to support housing and infrastructure growth across this province. Speaker, our government is reintroducing this bill at a time of new economic uncertainty. We are all familiar with the situation at hand with our neighbours to the south, and we are all in agreement that we need to work together to protect Ontario. We faced unprecedented economic uncertainty in our first term due to the pandemic crisis, and Ontario emerged from that with a strong, positive outlook. We are a resilient and hard-working province, and we come together, as Canadians often do, to overcome challenges as they arise. Today, we are working diligently to build a more competitive, resilient, and self-reliant economy, and we are doubling down on our plan to build. Together, the measures in this bill will help the government to protect Ontario and strengthen communities by preserving and creating jobs in Ontario's industrial heartland, protecting public safety, and providing our province with the resources we need for growth. All good things, Speaker. So let's talk a little bit about the different sections of this bill. This year's wildland fire season is well underway, and I would like to thank Ministry staff for the vital work they are doing to protect this province. Work that protects people, communities, infrastructure, and economic activity of this province from the impact of wildland fires. While last year the Ministry managed 480 fires in Ontario, which was well below the 700 fires managed the year before, other parts of Canada faced a severe wildland fire season. And Ontario provided critical support to 6 provinces and the Northwest Territories by deploying our staff and resources. Across Canada, wildland fires are a frequent and rising concern, and Ontario is not immune. Our government is investing in and modernizing our wildland fire management program to meet this growing threat. To strengthen our ability to prevent, mitigate, and manage wildland fires, the government is proposing to amend the Forest Fires Prevention Act. This act is the primary provincial legislation for managing wildland fires in our province. It outlines obligations for preventing wildland fires, authorizes enforcement measures, and includes provisions for offences. If this bill is passed, the Forest Fires Prevention Act would be renamed the Wildland Fire Management Act, and a purpose clause would be added to reflect a stronger focus on all aspects of wildland fire management, including prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. This stronger focus is necessary if we are to combat the growing risk and impact of these fires. We need to ensure that people and businesses are aware of and comply with rules designed to prevent human-caused fires. Madam Speaker, it may come as a surprise to some here, but over 50% of wildland fires are caused by human interaction. We need to make sure that we're prepared and ready and doing everything we can to make the people of the province aware. So the amendments we proposed in the Act would help our ministry manage the expected increase in wildland fire activity, thereby reducing the risk of wildland fires posed to people, communities, infrastructure, and economic activity. Reducing that risk is a shared responsibility, Madam Speaker. The amendments in this bill would strengthen collective responsibility for managing wildland fires, enhance all aspects of wildland fire management, including prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery, as I mentioned before, and strengthen compliant and enforcement measures. My ministry's long-term goal is an Ontario that works together to minimize the impact of wildland fires, creating safer and more resilient communities. To that end, this bill proposes to clarify the types of wildland fire management agreements my ministry can undertake. The Act, as it stands now, enables my ministry to enter into agreements for the prevention, control, and extinguishment of grass, brush, or forest fires. Bill 27 would enable my ministry to enter into agreements on all aspects of wildland fire management, such as an agreement on training with the municipality or First Nation community, or an agreement to support activities for the prevention and mitigation of wildland fires. In summary, this amendment would facilitate increased collaboration among all parties involved in wildland fire management. My ministry also aims to intensify its collaboration with the municipalities and industries in the fire region to enhance wildland fire management. We are proposing an amendment to the Act that would require these partners to maintain wildland fire management plans. These plans would need to meet prescribed standards set out in a regulation under the Act should this bill be passed. These standards would define required prevention, mitigation, and preparedness activities. Meeting requirements for wildland fire management plans may involve updating an existing plan or creating a new one altogether. My ministry would consult with municipalities and industry on the regulations for this proposal, as well as potential resource needs. And ministry staff would provide technical support to ensure adequate plans are in place to address the escalating risk of wildland fires. During a wildland fire emergency, my ministry draws on resources from the private sector, including equipment and sometimes equipment operators. This enables the ministry to respond to wildland fires quickly using the resources at hand. We have 41 arrangements with companies in the forest industry that set out terms for the use of their equipment, Madam Speaker. Each agreement has its terms, conditions, and remuneration rates. In this bill, we propose to provide for the making of regulations that would standardize these terms, conditions, and rates, to reduce the amount of administrative work they now require and make it easier to mobilize the closest equipment in an emergency. Industry strongly supports the clarity that standard terms and conditions would provide. This amendment would also expand the circumstances under which my ministry could request industry assistance, adding other wildland fire-related emergency events, such as evacuations. By strengthening the Act's enforcement and penalty provisions, this bill would provide my ministry with the necessary tools and powers to hold accountable those who fail to comply with or contravene the Act itself. At the same time, Bill 27 would give my ministry increased flexibility in certain circumstances, enabling the exercise of judgment in determining how best to proceed, depending on the circumstances of each case. In short, the question is whether to resort to the court system as an Act currently requires, or to consider alternative measures instead. Almost half, as I said, of wildland fires are caused by people. Charges are laid when there are contraventions of the Act, including some instances where human-caused fires result from a violation. Yet we recognize that alternative solutions may be preferable in some certain circumstances. This bill would enable my ministry to make regulations for the issuance of administrative monetary penalties for non-compliance with the Act. A penalty that can be issued without pursuing charges and launching prosecution. This approach could be used to penalize activities that could start a wildland fire or impede its suppression and extinguishment, such as operating equipment without the required spark arresters, or failing to have a fire extinguisher on a work site as required. Forest industry companies are already subject to these penalties under the Crown Forest Sustainability Act 1994. This proposed measure would apply to all industries and persons subject to the newly named Wildland Fire Management Act, a fair and equitable approach that with modern regulatory principles, including progressive compliance. I know you're all very riveted by this. Thank you. Just needed a sip of water. It's going to get good. This bill would also enable my ministry to make regulations without the issuance of a remediation order, without initiating a prosecution, enable us to resolve some issues outside of the court system, which I think we all agree is a good thing. A remediation order could require a person to plant trees or participate in wildland fire education. A regulation under the Act could specify the circumstances under which a remediation order might be considered. The bill would also address recovering the costs of wildland fire suppression incurred by the ministry, and that can be substantial, Madam Speaker. Under the Act, as it stands, for human-caused wildland fires, the costs of suppression or extinguishing a fire are automatically a debt to the Crown. This obliges my ministry to seek recovered costs from individuals or companies that have caused a wildland fire. Yet, in some cases, cost recovery may not be possible, or it may impose a hardship or not be in the public interest. So I'll give you an example. Let's say a driver pulls over where their car catches fire, igniting weeds on the road shoulder, and it accidentally causes a wildland fire. Under the Act as it stands, this driver would receive an invoice from the ministry for the cost of suppressing or extinguishing said fire. An invoice would be issued, a payment would be pursued. Bill 27 would give my ministry discretion in determining whether or not to seek recovery costs for the damages. This would enable the ministry to take into consideration the specific circumstances involved, such as the circumstances of that unlucky driver. The bill would also clarify the minister's power to prohibit activities during wildland fire emergencies and their authority to exempt persons from such orders in certain circumstances. My ministry is also modernizing the wildland fire program to increase our collaboration with municipalities, Indigenous communities, and industry. Through policy, program, and public service improvements that complement the legislative changes proposed in this bill. I'll give you another example, Madam Speaker. We are enhancing wildland fire hazard and risk assessments and stepping up our wildland fire awareness campaigns to better inform Ontarians of the risks and dangers associated with wildland fires. We need to educate members of the public and increase their awareness of the actions they can take to reduce fire risk. We rely on the efforts of the public and our partners at the local level to take the necessary steps to break the link between spark and a flame. It will take all Ontarians working together across the fire region to reduce the risk of wildland fires. And the collective efforts of all our partners to fulfill this vision of safer, stronger, and more resilient communities. My ministry also aims to work more closely with Indigenous communities in natural hazard management by enhancing support for the traditional use of fire, including cultural burning, and enabling wildland fire management led by Indigenous communities. We would consider the unique needs, values, cultures, and voices of Indigenous communities under this approach to better manage wildland fires and develop fire-resilient communities. While human activities often cause wildland fires, they also occur naturally. These naturally occurring fires, often ignited by lightning strikes, play a crucial role in renewing our boreal forest. Every wildland fire is assessed. My ministry then responds based on the situation and condition of the fire. When wildland fires threaten communities, properties, our timber supply, and the infrastructure we rely on, our fire crews are at the ready, acting as quickly as they can to contain the threat. Other wildland fires are managed to limit their adverse effects. And when it is safe to do so, some fires are only monitored. This enables us to use these fires to regenerate the forest. We also occasionally use prescribed burns to decrease fire risk in some vegetated regions, since vegetation can fuel wildland fires, Madam Speaker. We see the potential to utilize vegetation management practices in complementing essential activities such as timber harvesting, land use planning, and development. When done together, these activities will support Ontario's growth while protecting communities and our economy. My ministry is a signatory to the Canadian Wildland Fire Prevention and Mitigation Strategy, adopted by Canada's forest ministers last year. This strategy is a call to action aimed at mobilizing all sectors of society to reduce wildland fire risk. The legislative changes proposed in this bill, along with the program and service improvements I've outlined, would support my ministry in leading this work in Ontario, while also helping to build stronger, more resilient communities. So, Speaker, we'll move on to the next section of the bill. This portion of the bill is looking to update the Surveyors Act, and it will address Ontario's rapidly expanding infrastructure and housing development needs. The Act grants authority to the Association of Land Surveyors, the self-governing body that oversees the licensing and governance of professional land surveyors in our province. Ontario land surveyors have been guiding the use of land in our province for generations. The work they do is the foundation of all that we develop. Without their efforts, our province would not be able to grow. Ontario is on a steady trajectory towards growth, creating an ever-increasing need for professional land surveyors to meet rapid housing, infrastructure, and industrial development needs. We rely on the information surveyors provide to build Ontario, its infrastructure, homes, and communities. We also rely on surveyors to help communities recover from emergencies such as flooding in urban areas and wildland fires. Since boundary markers can be lost during these catastrophic events, many of the dedicated professionals who carry out this essential work are progressing towards the latter stages of their careers. This suggests to my ministry and their association that our province could one day face a barrier to growth due to a lack of surveyors. Already, surveyors are in short supply across Northern Ontario. The measures proposed in Bill 27 would help to increase the availability of surveying services where and when they are needed. Our goal is to avoid delays in infrastructure and housing projects, as well as delays in property transactions. These amendments would also enable survey firms to use modern technologies, such as virtual meeting technology and cloud computing, in their practices, and enhance the professional oversight provided by the association. My ministry collaborated closely with the Association of Ontario Land Surveyors in developing these proposals, which the association has endorsed. So to become a licensed Ontario land surveyor, a candidate must complete a 4-year degree and have up to 3 years of experience. Given the aging demographic within the profession and the growing demand for survey services, Ontario needs to increase its supply of surveyors. Bill 27 would allow for the introduction of a limited license to achieve this goal. This type of license would restrict its holder to participating in certain areas of competency, such as basic work surveys within a new subdivision plan. Holders of limited licenses would not be able to complete or sign off on more complex work, such as expropriation, a highway plan, or a plan under the Mining Act, Madam Speaker. Those holding a limited license would work under the supervision of a fully licensed surveyor, very similar to an apprenticeship. The supervisor would be responsible for ensuring the limited license holder is only assigned work they are competent to do. The scope of work permitted would be specified in the license itself, while the eligibility requirements for a limited license would be outlined in the regulations. If this bill is passed, Ontario would be the first jurisdiction in Canada to adopt this innovative approach in the surveying profession. In addition to increasing the supply of survey services, this amendment would provide another benefit, Madam Speaker. It would allow surveyors with less Canadian experience to undertake specific survey work under the supervision of a fully licensed surveyor, helping internationally trained surveyors begin practicing in our province. This bill would also allow the association to issue a temporary license to a person holding a license equivalent to a full Ontario license from another jurisdiction, The association has a labour mobility agreement with other Canadian jurisdictions, allowing a surveyor from outside a jurisdiction to obtain membership in another demonstrating knowledge of local law. A surveyor coming to Ontario from another jurisdiction must pass an exam on Ontario law as it applies to surveying in our province. And this can take a significant amount of time, Madam Speaker. In other professions, such as engineering, qualified practitioners can be brought into Ontario from other jurisdictions for emergency projects. The Surveyors Act, as it's currently written, does not provide for this. To recover from an emergency such as a wildland fire or a flood in an urban area, a community urgently needs surveyors. These professionals assess damages and survey lost boundaries, and this is critically important to affected communities as it allows them to rebuild and recover. A temporary license program would enable Ontario to respond more rapidly to those types of emergencies, helping a family return home, an essential service to be restored, or a washed-out roadway to be rebuilt as quickly as possible. Surveyors with a temporary license would also be required to work, as I had stated, under the supervision of a licensed surveyor in Ontario. If this bill is passed, Ontario would be the first jurisdiction within Canada to adopt the use of temporary licenses within the surveying profession. This approach is being successfully used in related licensed professions as well. This bill would also enable survey firms to use new and innovative technologies to deliver survey services. Firms would no longer be required to operate a physical consultation office or maintain a schedule of posted hours. These amendments would enable firms to benefit from the efficiencies provided by modern business practices. And finally, this bill would enable the association to provide increased oversight on the surveying profession. This would strengthen its governance and build greater trust and confidence within the surveying industry. Ontario is the largest economy in Canada, boasting a vast and varied geography, as well as rapidly growing population, making growth and development essential to our future. Homes, hospitals, schools, roads, highways, subway lines, factories, mines, sawmills, infrastructure. You name it, we need it, Madam Speaker. And we need surveyors to get the job done. A UK-based survey association notes that surveying has been part of construction since the earliest recorded days of history, for as long as humans have been building infrastructure. Over the centuries, the technologies used within this essential profession have evolved with the times through ongoing innovation. In 1892, Ontario land surveyors used a plumb bob and a chain and a compass. Today, they rely on GPS and magnetic bar detectors. This bill would bring about equally essential innovations to the licensing, operation, and governance of the survey profession. Now we're going to get to the part everybody's been waiting for, I can tell. Bill 27 would also amend the Oil, Gas, and Salt Resources Act to enable my ministry to promptly repair certain oil and gas wells that pose a public safety risk when the operator is unable to do so. The history of oil and gas extraction in Ontario dates back to the 1850s, Madam Speaker. Over the many years that have passed since then, tens of thousands of oil and gas wells have been drilled here, primarily across southwestern Ontario. When a well is not properly maintained, it can deteriorate over time, and this makes it more likely to leak. Gas from leaking wells can contaminate drinking water or pose other hazards that affect people in the environment, and we need to prevent those events from occurring. Ontario's Oil, Gas and Salt Resources Act enables my ministry inspectors to order well operators to address hazards related to wells. However, in some cases, an operator may be unable to respond to an order due to compliance issues. This can occur in cases of insolvency or when a sound operator passes away. My ministry does not want to stand by when hazards need to be maintained, and we need to be able to address them immediately. That's why Bill 27 would enable my ministry to address a hazard without the consent of an operator, but only in limited circumstances, when an operator who is bankrupt, insolvent, or deceased fails to or cannot comply with an order. My ministry would seek the consent of the landowner to gain access to the land where the hazardous well is situated. When that is not possible, we would seek a judicial warrant to enter the premises without the landowner's consent. This would allow us to remediate the hazard in a very timely fashion to protect the public property, the landowner, and the natural environment in these limited circumstances of non-compliance. It would also allow my ministry to pursue a non-compliant well operator for the cost of that remediation. The provinces of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia already have similar powers, and we need this capability here in Ontario. This measure would be welcomed by the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs and our municipal partners. My ministry's Legacy Well Action Plan is also addressing the challenges arising from historical oil and gas wells. Under this plan, we aim to increase our understanding of the risk, develop risk management strategies, and support emergency planning and preparedness. In industrial processes such as steelmaking, oil and gas refining, cement production, and fertilizer and lime production, a significant amount of energy is consumed. As a result, these industrial processes release large amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Additionally, these energy-intensive industries also possess significant fixed assets, such as manufacturing and processing facilities that have long lifespans and considerable complexity. These conditions make it difficult for industries to reduce their carbon emissions cost-effectively and quickly. And that's why they are considered hard-to-abate industries, Madam Speaker. But the story doesn't end there. These industries can capture the carbon dioxide they create during production and store it underground instead of releasing it into the atmosphere. Here in Ontario, these hard-to-abate industries are telling the province that they want to be permitted to do this. And our government is listening, Madam Speaker. And that is why this bill includes the proposed Geologic Carbon Storage Act. This act focuses on the underground storage of carbon dioxide, which is part of the process that falls under my ministry's jurisdiction. What could a legislative framework to permit geological carbon storage mean for our province, Madam Speaker? It could mean a lot. Keeping industries and the jobs they create invested here in Ontario, attracting new investments to our province, lowering industrial carbon emissions, and developing Ontario-based expertise in a tomorrow technology. While geologic carbon storage should not be new to Ontarians, it has been successfully implemented in other regions. Or it would be new to Ontarians, Madam Speaker. We currently don't allow it in our current framework. More than 40 carbon capture, utilization, and storage projects are now operating worldwide in Western Canada, Australia, Norway, the UK, and the United States. The technology has a 50-year track record. It is attracting growing interest and investment around the world. According to the International Energy Agency, some 700 carbon capture projects are in various stages of development across 50 countries. Implementing carbon capture technology in a large plant is a significant undertaking. So why are Ontario's energy-intensive, hard-to-abate industries interested in carbon management, given its complexity and cost, Madam Speaker? Well, I'll tell you. In Canada, industries pay a price on the carbon they emit, creating an economic incentive to lower emissions. And in Canada, an industry that invests in a carbon capture, utilization, and storage project may also qualify for federal investment tax credits. Ontario's industrial sector is a vital component of the province's economy. Many communities rely on the jobs and economic activity that energy-intensive, hard-to-abate industries generate. Nowhere more than in southwestern Ontario, where I call home, Madam Speaker. If carbon management options such as geological carbon storage are not available in Ontario, industries may consider relocating to jurisdictions that already permit this activity, or to countries that don't have a price on carbon. This would have serious consequences for Ontario's industrial heartland and could result in the deindustrialization of entire regions. Now more than ever, we must protect Ontario, including its industrial base, by creating conditions that attract and retain these key job creators. As the government works to transform Ontario's economy into the most competitive place in the G7 for investment, job creation, and businesses, we are proposing the Geological Carbon Storage Act to support this initiative and attract these investments. This bill would help secure the future of industry-reliant communities while increasing the resiliency of Ontario's industrial base. The numbers speak for themselves. If this bill is passed, the initial development of commercial carbon storage projects in southwestern Ontario could sustain as many as 2,400 existing jobs in Ontario's manufacturing, oil and gas, and utility sectors, and create up to 4,000 short-term jobs associated with the development of carbon capture and storage projects. This bill could also help industries remain competitive by reducing the price they pay on carbon by as much as $1.2 billion per year. These initial benefits may increase if carbon storage technology continues to advance and the development of technology continues to advance and the development of carbon storage facilities in other parts of the province becomes commercially viable. Should industries be permitted to develop commercial scale carbon storage projects in Ontario, the economic impact could be substantial. According to Natural Resources Canada, 3 large-scale carbon capture and storage projects could lead to $2.7 billion of an increase in GDP based on a 4-year construction timeframe. And should this technology continue to advance and expand across the province, these benefits would only grow. We've touched on the economic prosperity this proposal could deliver, but what about the environmental benefits? These benefits could be very significant to our province. As it stands, approximately 30% of Ontario's greenhouse gas emission originates from industrial sources. Bill 27 would enable hard-to-abate industries to permanently store the carbon dioxide they emit in suitable underground formations. In just the initial phase of this development, commercial-scale carbon storage projects could reduce annual industrial carbon emissions by 11 to 15% here in Ontario. That's the equivalent of taking roughly 2 million cars off the road. The most suitable underground geological formations for carbon storage in our province are saline aquifers and depleted oil and gas reservoirs. These are mainly found in southwestern Ontario, right where many of these hard-to-abate industries are clustered. This would be an advantage in developing a carbon management sector in our province. I mentioned that one of the benefits from the proposed Geological Carbon Storage Act is the development of expertise in this tomorrow technology. Fortunately, Ontario has a solid foundation to begin with. Ontario has a long history of regulating the oil and gas industries in the southwest, and valuable experience in managing underground resource storage safely and responsibly. Our ministry already oversees the storage of natural gas and hydrocarbons underground in salt caverns. Additionally, compressed air is used for the electricity generation in Goderich. This expertise will help guide the development of geological carbon storage projects in our province. This bill would enable proponents to implement carbon storage projects safely and responsibly, following the best practices from other jurisdictions. The Geological Carbon Storage Act would provide the necessary legislative framework to enable the responsible design, construction, operation, and closure of carbon storage facilities. It would also specify the requirements for post-closure management and ensure the long-term safety of these projects. The Act would also clarify the ownership of pore space in Ontario and facilitate access to suitable underground formations for this carbon storage. The transition to a net zero future will occur at varying paces across different sectors of the economy. It will take considerable time for hard-to-abate industries. Both the International Panel on Climate Change and the International Energy Agency have included that the path to net zero 2050 depends on the widespread deployment of carbon management technologies, including geological carbon storage. These respected global bodies each recognize the challenges facing hard-to-abate industries in reaching this conclusion, and our government agrees. Geological carbon storage would help these industries meet their climate targets and ensure key sectors of our economy can continue to operate and grow. This technology would ensure Ontario's industrial base can contribute to a cleaner, more sustainable world, while preserving and creating thousands of high-value jobs, attracting significant investment, helping industries based in our province to remain globally competitive, protecting vital sectors across our essential to our economic prosperity, and ensuring we stay ahead of the transition to a low-carbon economy. So I'm going to touch just a little bit on some of the forestry pieces of this bill, but I know that the Associate Minister will go a little bit more in depth, so I think maybe I'll skip over them. I'm getting the nod from him. I think he's going to go over it. So I think we'll wrap up at this point, Madam Speaker, and I just want to say thank you to everybody that's put the hard work in designing this legislation. This, as I had mentioned before, is a bill that was introduced into the Ontario legislature before the previous election. So thank you to previous Minister Graydon Smith for all the work that he's done, and of course the team at the office that's helped to put all this together. So I think with that, Madam Speaker, I'm going to turn it over to the Associate Minister, and thank you everybody for your time this afternoon.